Welcome, everybody. Appreciate you taking time out of your summer day here to join us. I'm going to cut straight to the chase, but before I do, I, as the leader of this little company, my goal is to continue to provide value, and I'd like to show you something we've recently done here in the last week. On the top right-hand corner of your Network in Action website, when you log in, go ahead, Dan, and you go over to Business Solutions in the top right-hand corner, we are making available right under Business Solutions these 2K agendas. So many of your franchise owners have been sharing those with you. So you just click right there under Get Started. And if one of these agendas is of interest to you, so obviously this month we're talking about leading through change. Last month we talked about how to turn your social media contacts into customers. Then we talked about, Dan, if you'll quit clicking. Then we talked about how to utilize AI for LinkedIn. So if you missed any of those sessions, you can certainly go on there and do that. And that is the whole idea, is that we bring you some value every single month with our agenda. So Dan, if you will, click back and let me see all 5 of them at one time. Thank you. So how to get more 5-star reviews. We provide you the software for that. Utilizing Bank to close more sales. We'll continue to add to this. Next month, we're doing a session on imposter syndrome and sales, and every single month you're going to see value. But if you miss out on one of them, they will be posted right here under Business Solutions. So let's cut to the chase. You did not come to hear me do a commercial, but I want to make sure that we're bringing you value. Today, I'm super excited. I met Mark about 2 months ago, and he's here to talk about mental toughness. Mark is a change agent and a renowned mental toughness trainer with a very humorous and engaging speaking style. I know you're going to enjoy him. He's worked with Fortune 500 companies, as well as middle market and small businesses, to help them raise their level of consciousness to build bigger futures they deserve. And so Mark's going to bring a fun atmosphere, allowing us to cut through the psychological delusions and make necessary changes. So from Sarasota, Florida, the man of the hour, Mark Thompson. Good to see you, Mark.
Well, hello, everyone. We're going to try to do the share here, see if it works. How do we do?
A+. You did great. You did great.
Good afternoon, everyone. Glad to be here. Glad to talk to you. I love this subject so much. And I should start out by asking you this question. Just imagine this. What would it be like to live a life of unrestricted existence, as is described by Ayn Rand in her books Fountainhead and Atlas Shrugged? And the point is, it's all out there. Whenever I talk with someone about mental toughness, I always kind of have this little fear factor. And the fear factor is that sometimes people are reticent, too reserved, or maybe even have a little fear to be able to ask the what if question. We all remember from grade school, Christopher Columbus, right? He was going to sail the ocean blue and open up the trade routes for Spain. Well, anyway, Christopher was out trying to raise money. And the point of view, or the thinking at that time, was that the earth was flat. So if we invested in Christopher's voyages, there's a reasonable chance he's going to sail off the end of the earth, and they're never going to get their money. So people were, they were reluctant to invest. But Christopher, he pressed on, and he was somehow able to wrangle himself a meeting with the Queen Isabella of Spain. He goes in to make the presentation to Queen Isabella, telling her all about what's happening. And the Queen sits there just expressionless. I mean, not even a flicker, right? You maybe have been in some of those presentations yourself in your life when you thought to yourself, this isn't going very well. Well, that's kind of how Christopher felt. It didn't seem to be going very well, but he pressed on, and he got to the end of the presentation, and he goes for the close, and he says, Your Majesty, when I'm successful with these voyages and I open up the trade routes, it will mean untold wealth for Spain, and it will cement your legacy as probably the greatest monarch that ever lived. So I just have one question for you, Queen. What if I'm right? How soon would you want to know? And at that point, the Queen got a little bit of a smile on her face. And as they say, the rest is history. Christopher got his money and Spain became an incredibly wealthy country for centuries, and she became a great queen. They were a great naval power, all because she was willing to ask the what if question. So now move ahead a long ways to November, I think it was in the summer of 1961. John F. Kennedy's running for president. And he as well as the country was doing, we'd finished World War II, we'd completed, we got out of the Korean conflict. The country, the United States, was doing very well. Taxes were low. There was an insatiable appetite for supplies. So the manufacturing plants were running. People wanted cars. They wanted white goods. But Kennedy felt, there's still a little bit of a malaise here. As successful as we are, I know we can do better. So he calls Dr. Warner Van Braun, the famous rocket scientist, and he asks him to come to Hyannisport and meet with him. And the good doctor comes, and Kennedy takes him for a walk in the garden. Now, this is before Steve Jobs made walking in the garden a cool thing, right? So they go for a walk in the garden, and he says to the good doctor, he says, "Can we put a man on the moon?" And the good doctor says, "You can absolutely put a man on the moon if you have the will to do it." And of course, Kennedy goes, he makes this big speech. He says, "We're going to put a man on the moon. We don't do it because it's easy. We do it because it's hard." And of course, we all know, what happened. So one of the things about mental toughness is you have to be able to have the will and the focus to be able to do something that you want to accomplish. You've all heard of the Pareto principle. So the Pareto principle is scientifically proven. We get 80% of our success out of 20% of our efforts. The problem many times is we don't know the 20%. And this is really kind of one of the secrets to mental toughness, is to find out what is the one thing that we need to be mentally tough about. So what actually is mental toughness? So mental toughness is, am I moving my screen okay here? Mental toughness means taking control of your thoughts, feelings, and attitudes, especially under pressure. You may have remembered the old movie. It was many years ago, called City Slickers, with Billy Crystal and Jack Palance. And Billy Crystal is an ad executive in New York, and he gets his buddies together, and they're going to go to this dude ranch. But there was kind of a side story to this, and that was that Billy Crystal's character, Matt Robbins was the character's name, was really trying to find what was the secret to life. So they go to this dude ranch, and they get embroiled in this cattle drive. And one night they're sitting out on their horses under the stars, and Billy Crystal's character turns to Curly, the old cowboy, the old sage cowboy. And he says to Curly, "Curly, can you help me? Can you help me with this?" He says, "What do you think is the secret to life?" And Curly thinks for a minute. Now, Curly was not a man of many words, but Curly thinks for a minute, and finally he holds up his finger. And Billy Crystal says, "A finger? That's the secret to life?" And Curly says, "No, you idiot. It's not the finger. It's the one thing. It's the one thing that's the most important thing in your life. You've got to figure that out. And once you figure that out, everything else kind of snaps together." So, how do we go about figuring that out? So one of the things I did kind of experimented a little bit is I would ask people, I'd walk them up to them on the street. I didn't do this to too many people, but I did to a few. And I said, would you like to be more mentally tough? And virtually to a person, everybody said, "Yes, I would like to be more mentally tough." And then the second question was, "Well, do you think you're mentally tough now?" Well, now there was a little more variability in the answers. Not everybody said, "Well, I don't know if I'm mentally tough. I don't really know for sure, whatever." Well, let me give you the good news here. Every one of you, all of us, are mentally tough, but you got to figure out that one thing. You got to figure out what it is that you want to be mentally tough about. So here's another little story for you. So let's say you're driving home from work one night, and it's a normal day. Nothing overly exciting happened. You're driving home, and you're kind of tossing around in your head the things that happened that day and what's going on in your head, what went on in the business, and not just kind of going along. Everything's fine. And you notice out in the distance, there's some smoke that's kind of billowing up in the sky. And you don't think too much of it and keep on driving. You get a little bit closer to your neighborhood, and you realize that the smoke is in your neighborhood. Now you get a little bit closer to the street that you live on, and you realize that there's a house on fire, and it's your house. So you step on the gas, you race up to the barricades, you jump out of your car, and there's the fire chief, the fire trucks, the hoses all over the ground, and you run up to the fire chief and you say, "Did you get my kids out?" And the fire chief says, "Listen," he says, "you can, mister, you can see that the house is becoming more engulfed in flames." He says, "You need to, you need to sit down on the curb and let me do my job. Just let us do our job here. I can't send my men in there. It would be a suicide mission." And now you've got a decision to make, a split-second decision to make. Do you sit down on the curb, or do you jump the barricade and rush into the house, attempting to save your children's life, knowing full well from the fire chief, who obviously experienced 30 years in the job, hundreds of house fires he was at, saying that this is a suicide mission? What do you do? Do you sit on the curb, or do you rush into the house? So let me ask you this question. I can't really see everybody here in this view, but I can ask this question: is how many people would sit on the curb? Most people, and when I ask this in a group, by a show of hands, nobody raises their hands. Why would you not sit on the curb? Why would you rush into the house knowing full well that you may die? Well, the obvious reason is you rushing into the house to save your kids, because your kids are worth dying for. In mental toughness, you need to figure out what's the most important thing in your life that you are literally willing to die for. Once you know that, you can use the tools of mental toughness, and you can have extraordinary success with whatever it is that you choose to do. The Navy SEALs, they have this mantra, and it's called the 3 Gs. And it says, get in, get it done, and get out before somebody dies. The Navy SEALs, as you know, probably the greatest fighting force in the world. They are so incredibly focused on what it is that they want to do. Do you remember the time that they went after bin Laden and successfully got bin Laden, although it did have its issues? The Navy SEALs, that team, they practiced for 2 months, 18 hours a day, running that mission on a mock-up of a facility that they figured out was very much like bin Laden's. They ran that mission over and over again. They'd run the mission, they'd come back, they'd debrief, they'd run the mission again over and over and over again until they absolutely knew that they could accomplish it. And that's the type of focus that you have to have. Whenever you read about anybody who's in sports or entertainment, they're using the tools of the Navy SEALs, these mental toughness tools, to accomplish a lot of great things in their life. So Einstein says a problem cannot be solved at the same level of consciousness on which it occurs. So one of the things we need to think about with mental toughness is exactly how do we measure where we're really at? What is the gradients of mental toughness? How do we figure out how mentally tough we are? And I'm going to show you how you can do that right here now in this wonderful afternoon meeting. So let me ask you this question. If a person was going to go on a diet, right? They made a decision that they were going to go on a diet. What would be the first thing that they would do? Now, it's not go out for steaks and martinis the night before. That's not the answer. But what is the one thing that you would do if you were going to go on a diet before you started? What would be the one thing you'd do? This is the interactive part. What?
Make a plan.
Make a plan would be one thing. What else? What even at the beginning of the plan, what would you do?
I think some people would start working out, exercising.
Yeah. Even before that.
I think I'd clean out my refrigerator and cabinets with all of that stuff I shouldn't be eating.
Exactly. And even before that.
I'd say
decide how much you want to lose.
That's it. Well, yes, you'd get on a scale. You'd measure exactly what you weighed so you knew what you were going to do. All right, so let's just go through this next little exercise and show you how you can measure or determine the level of mental toughness that you have. Well, the way that we look at mental toughness is we look at it in terms of what we call levels of consciousness. Okay, so and we use socioeconomic terms to describe this to help it be more easy for you to understand. So I'll just take you through these. Each one of these 5 levels of consciousness, by the way, has a mantra that goes with it. So the first one here is what we call the poverty class. That's 5% of the population. And the poverty class, the mantra that goes along with the poverty
good.
class is, we live, we die, life sucks. Not going to spend a lot of time on that. The next one is what we call the working class. This is 10% of the population. The mantra that goes along with the working class consciousness, level of consciousness, is I just want to survive. Get up in the morning, go to work, punch the clock, do the work, punch the clock, go home, sit on the couch, watch Survivor or The Bachelorette or whatever, get up the next day, do it again. I just want to survive. If someone was interviewing for this type of a job in a company, the questions that they'd ask would be questions like, what time do we start? What time's lunch? What time do we quit? How many breaks? How many weeks do I get for vacation? That's the mentality of someone who is of the working class, who just simply wants to survive. That's 10% of the population. The next one is what we call middle class consciousness. This is 70% of the population. The middle class consciousness mantra is, I just want to be comfortable. This category here of the middle class is the most dangerous category for someone to be in. The reason why it's the most dangerous category for someone to be in is the people that are in the middle class, have middle class consciousness, are delusional. They think they're better than they are. They think they're smarter than they are. They think they work harder than they are. And these are also the people that have bought a home more than they can afford. They're the ones that lease their cars rather than buy them because they can't afford to buy them. And by the way, they don't lease a Ford Focus. They lease an Escalade or a big BMW sedan, and they're driving around town. Boy, look how successful I am. And they're thinking how great they are. But yet, if you measure their results, it's not really very good. They just simply want to be comfortable. The upper class is 10% of the population. These people are very successful. They make a lot of money. And but the problem is that they struggle with what we call ego-based consciousness or fear-based consciousness. They're so afraid they're going to lose it. They work very, very hard every single day, every single month, every single year, because they're so afraid that they're going to lose it. Now, these people can afford to buy the yacht, the house in Aspen, go on the cruises. They can afford all that, but they work so hard because they're so afraid that something might happen and they might lose it. Now, if you're in a company, a corporation where people are working on the corporate ladder, trying to raise up the corporate ladder, this is a person you want to keep a very close eye on, because this person, they want to get to the top, and they will step on anybody that they need to in order to get to the top. And the last level here is, I guess this is what you'd call the best level. This is 5% of the population. This is what we call world-class consciousness. These are the people that are led by the spirit. It doesn't necessarily need to be religious spirit, but it's led by the spirit. It's by the heart. These are the people that care about the team. If you read books about leadership, this is where the servant leaders reside. Jim Collins wrote a great book called Good to Great, one of the most successful business books of all time, and I highly encourage you to read it. It's a great book. In fact, I wouldn't read it. I'd marinate in it. I'd mark it up, highlight it. There's a lot of good concepts in that book. But in that book, he talks about level 5 leaders. And his top level leader, level 5 leader, is would fit in this particular category here. One of the examples in the book, or one of the case studies in the book, talks about I think it's Kimberly Clark, where this guy his last name is Smith. I can't remember his first name. And he was working to turn around the business. And he was one of these level 5 type leaders. He cared about the people. He cared about the team. During the time that he was turning this business around, which was very successful, he was going away every weekend he had cancer, and he was going away every weekend and going through the chemotherapy treatments, and then he'd come back and then he'd work all week. He didn't want to give up. He didn't want to quit, because he cared about the team, and he wanted to see it through, and he wanted to have success. I don't know if there are any hockey fans in here, but back in 1980, in Lake Placid, the United States went up against the Russians in the greatest hockey game of all time, I guess, and they beat the Russians and won the gold medal. At the end of the game, Mike Graziani, who was the captain, he was interviewed by the commentator, and the commentator said, "How was it that you were able to beat this Russian team? they're bigger, they're stronger. They'd won gold medals in the past, but yet you took this young group of 18-year-old kids and you went out there and you beat them. How was it possible you were able to do it? Mike Razzioni thinks for me, he says, you know what? I got to tell you, I don't really know. It was a miracle. It was a miracle. I don't know how they did it, but it was a miracle. And the commentator says, well, no, it's got to be more than that. What was it that allowed them to win? He says, he thinks a little bit longer. He says, you know what it was? These kids loved each other. They absolutely loved each other. They went out there and they played their hearts out for the team. It was all about the team. So you could ask yourself here, well, where am I in terms of levels of consciousness, in terms of how I think about things? So let's go here to this next slide where we talk about levels of thinking. We think there's really three levels of thinking. There's negative thinking, which of course is infused with emotion. And negative thinking can be restrictive. It can hold you back, and it can be restrictive. Positive thinking is also infused with emotion, and it's a good thing to be a positive thinker, I think, generally speaking. However, positive thinking can also get you into trouble. So let's say, for example, you decided that you were in some major city in the country. It doesn't matter which one. Dallas, Houston, New York, Chicago, any major city in the country, and you decide to go to the most dangerous area of the city on a summer night, on a Saturday night at 3 o'clock in the morning, and walk around because, hey, nothing's going to happen because I'm a positive thinker. Well, not exactly maybe the best decision to make, because these two ways, they become infused with emotion. The last one, which we think is the best way of thinking for mental toughness, is what we call critical thinking. And I don't know if you probably, everybody looks so young on this screen here, so you may not remember this old television show from the 50s called Dragnet with Jack Webb. He was Sergeant Friday, and he was deadpan, very deadpan. And he'd go and there'd be some kind of a crime, a robbery or a murder or something, and he'd go there and he'd interview the witnesses. He'd be there to interview the witnesses. Now it was always a woman. Now don't send me any emails. This was the 50s. It was just always a woman. That's just the way the show was. But he'd go there and he'd start asking questions about the crime. What did you see? Who did you see? What did you recognize? What was going on? And the person would just be talking and talking and talking. And Jack Webb, his famous line that he would always say would be, "Man, just the facts, ma'am. Just give me the facts." And this, I think, is one of the more important parts about mental toughness, is we get caught up in all of the emotion, and we just kind of go off the rails thinking about all these different things, and we don't stop and we don't get the facts first. So when we work with companies, one of the ways that we work with them is the first thing that we do is that we interview about 5 of the executives of the management team in the company. And then we take that information from those interviews, and we create a set of questions, create a survey questions that are sent out to everyone. And then we have a one-day training session on mental toughness, 100% customized for the work that needs to be done in the organization. However, all these questions that we ask are all 100% customized except for one. And this one question is we ask this in every session. And the question that we ask is, based upon your results as a leader, would you consider yourself a good performer, a very good performer, or a great performer, i.e. a world-class performer? What's really interesting, and why we use this slide here, is that about 35,000 people have been through this program over 20 years. And when we ask this question, based upon your results as a leader, which of these would you rate yourself? Good performer, very good performer, or great performer, world-class performer? And almost to a group, it's the same number every time. 82% of the people say that based upon their results, they're world-class performers. So then we go to the next step and we ask leadership. We ask their bosses. We say, based upon your leaders and your people's results, what percentage would you say are world-class performers? So let me ask you, let's take about 3 guesses here. What kind of a number do you think the bosses would say in regards to what percentage of their people were world-class performers? How about 3 guesses? How about some numbers? Would it be higher or lower
5%.
than 82%?
I would guess 35%.
Okay, we got a 35%. Do we have another one?
I would think around the same.
Another 35%. How about one more?
I would think
Right.
it's a lot less,
Yeah,
A lot less.
lower.
And what number would you use?
probably 10.
Okay. Well, I will tell you that. Pardon?
About 20%.
And we got a 20%. Okay. Well, I will tell you that for 35,000 people over 20 years, almost to a group, the number comes in the same. It's 7%. So whoever the lady is, I think it was the lady that said 10%, she gets the prize. So here's what the takeaway is from this. That means that the people in the organization are operating with a 75%, 82 minus 7. They're operating with a 75% delusion factor. They think they're world class. Now, if you've got a group of people who thinks they're world class, think about how they're going to behave in the organization. How much time will they spend thinking and planning about the business and about the future? How much time will they prepare before they might go to a meeting or a sales call? How much time will they spend really thinking about innovation in the future? If they already think that they're world class, how much time will they spend time thinking about that? And that's what we find so many times in working with these companies. And it's this kind of, I guess, delusional thinking that holds companies back because they think they're bigger and better than they are. So let me ask you some questions here. All those little quiz questions here. Now that you guys are all knowledgeable about mental toughness and levels of consciousness, identify these thoughts as either middle class or world class. Is it possible to deal with brutal market forces? I'm sorry, it is impossible to deal with brutal market forces. Is that middle class thinking or world class thinking?
Middle class.
Middle class, I agree, middle class. I am unable to complete my activities and workload at work. Middle class thinking, world class thinking.
Middle class.
Middle class.
A team wins together or not at all. Middle class thinking, world class thinking.
World class.
World class.
I use critical thinking to analyze my performance. Middle class or world class?
World class.
Definitely world.
Here's a few more. Truth or fact? Interest rates keep us from growing our loan portfolio. True or false?
Probably false.
False.
My role as a leader, I'm good at controlling my emotions when making decisions. True or false?
Depends on the day.
Depends on the day. And just to go back to the objective reality piece, just to add, give a little more color to this one question right here. When we have this wonderful book called 177 Tools of the World Class. And these are the tools that we use to help companies become more mentally tough. And they're not, and they're in this, it says 177. They're not in here in order. They're just in the book, but they're not in order except for the first one. And the first one is called objective reality, and it has 2 sides. One side of objective reality is called truths, and the other ones are called facts. Facts are, we're here at around 4 o'clock at Eastern time and on Wednesday afternoon. Fact, can't really dispute that. Truths are perceptions of facts. They're what we think is the case. So put yourself in this position. Let's say you've got some kind of a crisis, a big problem or whatever in your company, and you need to solve it. And so you're all going to go and you're going to get into the conference room and you're going to start to work and solve this problem. And we've all been in these meetings before. And usually what happens is those meetings are filled with emotion. And everybody's got a different view. They're looking through a different set of lenses as to what the problem is and how we can solve the problem. Or maybe we can't solve the problem. I mean, there's all kinds of emotion flying around. But if you're skilled and trained in the concepts of objective reality, you would say, time out, let's just settle down. Let's get the facts up on the whiteboard or on the pad, and let's look at the facts first. And then once we have the facts and we know that these are the facts, now we can make some decisions about going forward. That one tool there I have heard from many of our clients, that one tool there, just to stop the train for a minute and get the facts on the table before we go off the rails, thinking in all kinds of different directions. It's incredibly valuable. Question? Okay. I'm a big thinker, a true visionary, and my results prove it. So would you say that's true or false?
True.
True.
True, yeah. Hopefully. There's a deep customer knowledge among our people. Do you think that's true or false?
Very true.
You think it's true? A deep customer knowledge among our people. Deep is the operative word here. Do you think that's true or false?
Absolutely false.
Yeah. I will tell you from a lot of the work that we do, most companies, many companies do not understand the voice of the customer well enough. In fact, I just read a little short article here just a couple of days ago, and it talked about if you're an entrepreneur and you have your business, you either can have a supply mindset or a demand mindset. And what they were trying to explain in the article is that many times with companies, they have a supply mindset. They're thinking about what they're trying to get out the door. A demand mindset says they're going to go out to the customers and they're going to spend the time to figure out what it is the customers really want, and then link that to what they have that differentiates them. So they're really understanding what the customer needs. And I will tell you, I mean, I'm in a lot of companies, big companies and small companies. This is an area that a lot of people don't have a handle on. One of the things that we do is we have a process called differentiating value. And what we do is we go in for a day and we meet with the management team and we get them to discuss and decide what it is about their company that makes them different. What's their differentiating value? What's different? And we get all that squared away and we kind of get it onto a one page. And then we hire a telemarketing firm, and they do what's called a double blind study. They call a list of prospects and customers that the customer gives us. And we develop a questionnaire of only like about 5 questions. When the reason it's double blind is the person that's making the call doesn't know who they're calling on behalf of. They're just and what they're calling about. They're just calling and they're just asking these questions. So it's pretty pure with the answers. And it's interesting when we get all the information back. We'll call like 100 people, by the way, the telemarketing company. But when we get all this information back, we'll take that information, kind of clean it all up, and we'll put it on kind of summarize it down to a one page. Do you know that when we go back to the company, our experience has been when we go back to the company, what the company said they thought that their customers wanted from them versus what the customers said they wanted, they were wrong by about 80%. Wow. And this happened time and time again. So companies don't know, they don't spend the time to find out what their customers really want. So whoever said that this is false, I think that's the right answer. It's been my experience that that's the right answer. You may have specific situations in your companies that you think that that's not true, or you've done that work. And if you have, congratulations. But I will tell you, this is a whole that many companies that is true in many companies. Let me just give you some of the concepts, just a few of them here that have been true about mental toughness to show you how some of these tools can get used. So one of them is what we call the presidential problem solving technique. And one of the tools in our book is called compartmentalization. It's an important tool where you take a problem and you can put it in a box. It's the hallmark of a great leader. And when you're the president of the United States, is what this is named after. You are facing life and death decisions every single day. You don't have the luxury of becoming emotionally involved in every single decision. You've got to be able to understand the facts and then put it in a box and go on to the next problem. back when Ronald Reagan was president of the United States, he'd of course been governor of California, and he had this big staff, and they'd come to him with these big decisions that he had to make, and they'd walk in, they'd have a big stack of documents, and the president said, "We're not going to do it this way anymore." He said, "Here's what I want you," Reagan said, "Here's what I want you to do. Whatever the problem is, I want you to explain it to me on an 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper, typed, double spaced. And at the bottom, I want you to have 3 boxes. Yes, no, needs more information. And so I want you to bring it down to a 1-page explanation." And his staff went crazy. "Oh, Mr. President, these problems too complex. We could never do that." And his response was, "If you can't explain it on 1 sheet of paper, you don't understand the problem." And I think there's a lot of truth there. We spend a lot of time with too much data, and we get caught up in all of that. This next one here, I actually already mentioned to you, the SEAL strategy, 3 Gs. Requires a massive practice, capturing bin Laden 18 hours a day for 2 months. And their 3G view: go in, get it done, and get out before somebody dies. Yamanouchi, can I say this right? Yamanouchi developed a product called Visicare, and previously had launched Lipitor, which was a drug. Lipitor was a cholesterol drug for the LDL cholesterol. And but they were about they had developed Visicare because it was a kidney drug, and they now had developed Lipitor, and they were about to launch it, and they were 2 years in the future. I don't know how many of you know how pharmaceutical companies work, but they spend tens of millions, hundreds of millions of dollars to develop a drug. And from the time the FDA approves the drug, they have 7 years in order to sell as much of it as they can, and then the generics come in, and of course the prices plummet, and they can't. It's infinitesimal. It's rounding errors, right? So Yamanouchi hired us to come in there and work with their team for 2 years prior to the FDA approval. We helped their sales force, their customer service, even their receptionists. We trained them in the mindset and the thinking and mental toughness to keep them engaged for 2 years before they could launch this product. And when they finally launched it, they went out, they were incredibly successful. One other thing that might be of interest to you is these people that sell pharmaceutical drugs to the doctors. This is probably one of the hardest sales jobs that there is. These guys, men and women, they make an incredible amount of money. They are highly trained. They spend as much as $250,000 per person training them. And when they launched this drug, and we spent 2 years training them in mental toughness, and then they went out to sell it. Many of these people made millions and millions of dollars, and they were very successful, and they used all those tools of mental toughness to be able to help them do that. Now, just a couple more here. What's this one here? The ultimate catalyst for change. When you want to change something, when you want to make a change in a business, and businesses are being pummeled or buffeted by changes every single day, when you want to change something, you need to have the right mindset. And so when we find companies that are in difficult times, or they need to be, what's the word I'm thinking of? When they need a rebound, what's the word I'm thinking of? They need a rebound. They need a catalyst to get the mind thinking going in the right direction, and they use mental toughness to be able to do that. Preparation for the storm. Now, this might sound a little contrarian. It says here, I can't teach you mental toughness. Now, here we are on the phone on this call for me to supposedly teach you mental toughness. The thing is, I can't teach you mental toughness. It would be like you coming to me and say, "Hey, I'd like to get stronger. I'd like you to teach me strength." Well, I can't teach you strength. I can give you a program. I can give you some processes. I can teach you how to use all the weights. I can put you on a schedule, but you have to go in and you have to do the work in order to develop the strength. It's the same thing with mental toughness. We can show you what these tools, how they work, how to use them, but you have to go in and you have to use them every day. And when you do use them and you get good at it, well, you can have great success. Sustainable resilience requires emotion, enthusiasm. Jeff Bezos, I'm just reading a book called The Everything Store about Jeff Bezos. Actually, I'd read one of his other biographies, and he had this concept called every day is day one. And day two is status. Every day is day one, day two is just status, and day three is irrelevant. And that was his incredible focus. And of course, he built the company and became, one of the richest, if not the richest guy in the world. He's got I think, got $1 trillion market cap. But he did that because to him, every day was day one. By the way, when I'm saying these things to you, it's a way it's for something for you to think about. You may say, I don't want to be that. I don't want to be that focused. I don't want to work that hard. And you know what? If you don't want to do that, then you don't have to. You don't have to. Nobody's making you do it. But if you do it, it can be very successful. Perspective, middle class will not take time to develop the vision bounded by their own limiting perspective. We're going to talk about that just a couple of slides here. Gratitude, nonlinear. One of the big things about being successful, and if you talk to people who are very successful, they'll all talk to you about how at some point in their life, they became grateful for what they had. Kobe Bryant was incredibly successful. He was killed here a few years ago in this helicopter crash, and I'd always watched him play basketball, but I certainly respected his skills and everything. But when he was killed in that helicopter crash, they were running all these newsreels about him, and I didn't have an appreciation until I saw those newsreels about his incredible work ethic. I mean, it's just unbelievable what his work ethic was. So there was a book that came out, and it was called Showboat. It's a good book if you're interested in basketball and Kobe Bryant. I'd encourage you to read it. And in that book, it talked about his life as a basketball player and how he evolved. And one of the things it talked about, he was a very, very successful basketball player. But when he became more successful and his teams became more successful, is when he started to think about what was most important was not him being a showboat and getting the points, but about the team, about the assists. And isn't it interesting in this latest news that we've been reading about Caitlin Clark over the last year or two here and all of her success, the gal player from Ohio is playing in the women's basketball. They always talk about her baskets and her assists because how important that is. It's about the baskets and the assists. Stephen Covey talks about it's about the end. Start with the end in mind. Visualize what you want something to look like. What you want something to look like, and then move towards it. Personal development. Surprisingly enough, only about 5% of the people of the population read anything about personal development. They go along and they just continue to go along, but they don't spend the time to really think about it. Logic versus emotion. This is, I think, an important one. We need to be emotional, okay? But we also have to recognize that we have to be logical. And strategic planning, for example, in businesses is logical, but you still need the emotion in order to get people to go after the bigger prize. I think this is the last one. Front sight focus. Always be looking ahead. When aiming the gun, align the front and the rear sights, but concentrate always on the front. In the front, always look ahead and be clear and sharp about what you see. And then I like this one, the Navy SEALs famous phrase, embrace the suck. It's a term that they use. Their missions that they go on are literally life and death missions. And they need to really be able to have the focus and intensity. I had a chance to meet a couple of Navy SEALs in our work. I didn't work with them, but I met them. And I am telling you, these guys are scary focused. I mean, they look at you and it's just like they look right through you. And to them, it's all about focus. It's all about the mission. More than anything else, it's about focus and it's about the mission. Non-linear thinking versus linear thinking. Non-linear thinking is A, B, C, D, E. Non-linear thinking is, they're all mixed up here. A, B, A, D, B, E, C, etc. So problem not being bold enough in business. A linear solution is all about working for hours. It's about trading time for money. Nonlinear thinking is about finding a solution to a problem. I have been using this mindset here myself for many, many years, and that is to not be a problem solver, but to be a problem finder. Find the problem and put a price tag on it. Help companies find a problem. A lot of times companies have problems that if you have an expertise in a particular thing, they have a problem that they don't even know that they have. So be the one that goes in there and finds the problem. The people that make the most money out there, the millionaires, multi-billionaires, they make the money in finding problems and solving them. That's how they make money, not by trading time for money. This is just kind of a little list of strategies the Navy SEALs use. Always be on the offensive. Bulletproof your mission. Know the purpose of the mission. Maintain front sight focus. Define your mission. Simplify the battlefield. Eliminate distractions. Select high value targets. This is one thing kind of in companies is if your people are not thinking big enough and bold enough, they're probably not going after high enough value targets. And if one way to judge that or see that is if you look at the initiatives you've worked on for the last, let's say 3 years or 5 years, have the initiatives that you're working on, have they gotten materially bigger and more valuable to your company, or are they kind of going along kind of flat or maybe with a slight incline? This is about having the sense to be looking for high value targets, thinking big. Mentally rehearse the mission. I talked to you about that with regards to the Navy SEALs, or about the Bin Laden thing. You gotta plan ahead. Identify and embrace the pain of the mission. Control your level of arousal. Don't get emotionally carried away, and control your level of self-talk. Now, this word self-talk, if you read the books about people who have been incredibly successful, people, professional athletes, professional entertainers, etc., and you ask them if there's one thing you could say to people that would allow them to become more mentally tough, to be more successful, what would be the one thing that you could say to people that they should do? And the answer across the board was self-talk, affirmations. So the guy who's my partner in all this, Steve Siebold, who wrote this book on mental toughness, he's written several other books, and he wrote one on how rich people think. Very good book. Get it on Amazon. And he interviewed 1,200 millionaires and billionaires over a period of about 20 years. And one of the billionaires that he's been trying to reach, been trying to interview, who he'd been referred to, they kept playing tag. They couldn't get their schedules squared away. Now this guy's a billionaire. He owns several companies. He had a couple of jets and a yacht. He said, okay, he said, Steve, he said, I'm going to be on my yacht in Miami Beach on this weekend. And if you come there, and my friend luckily happened to live in Miami, if you come there, I'll give you an hour and I will interview you. I'll do your interview. So he goes to see this guy, and he's got this big, massive yacht tied up to the dock. And they sit on the back of the yacht, and they got a coffee table and whatever. And the waiter comes out, he's got the silver tray with the coffee and the pastries or whatever. And he's interviewing, and as he's talking to him, he notices that on the coffee table, there's a sheaf of papers laying there. And he sees this one document, one piece of paper. It's 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper, maybe double or triple spaced, with all these sentence fragments on there, and it's laminated. And it catches his eye, and he asks the guy about this. He says, what are those? He says, well, those are my affirmations, and I read those every single morning. Now, here's a guy who's a billionaire, yacht, airplane, or jets, manufacturing companies, and he's using affirmations every single day to keep him focused on the business. So if you get one thing out of this meeting today, you might think about about putting some affirmations together. And if you don't want to spend the time to put those affirmations together, there's a book called Self-Talk by Shed Helmstead. Old book, but a very, very good book. It's the best book on self-talk. And you can go and you can buy that book on Amazon for, I don't know, $8 or $10. And he will teach you in there how to develop your own affirmations. It gives you a little template. And, you don't need more than about a half a dozen. And then just read them every single day or multiple times a day. One more quiz, a couple more quizzes. Identify these thoughts as either middle class or world class. I'm distracted by external changes, middle class or world class.
Middle.
Middle, yeah. No matter what changes come from senior management, I am responsible for my own results. Middle or world?
World.
World. Sometimes in meetings, I sense my people are not thinking big enough. Middle class, world class.
World.
Yeah, and their people maybe are thinking middle class. And then this one here, I have crystal clear written vision for my business life. World, middle class or world class. We're going to talk about that here just in a minute, having a written business plan, but world class is obviously the answer to that one. Truth or fact? I'm satisfied with the pace of growth of my company. True or false? Are you satisfied, or would you say that's true or false?
False.
False. Analysis of my team's performance is too black and white. True or false?
True.
Our process is coordinated among departments. True or false?
False.
Yeah, you know, we work with companies in strategic thinking. I've been doing that for 20 plus years, and many times companies think about their business where they have silo mentality: accounting, marketing, finance, manufacturing, etc. But strategy is horizontal; it goes across all those functions. And the best way to develop a strategy and to have greater success in your organization is to get people to understand that. We have adequate capital for growth. Well, I guess it's conceptual. That's, I guess, contextual. You may or may not have enough capital for growth. How about the people in this call? You guys got enough capital? Anybody want to venture a?
No.
No. And I'll tell you something about that. There is a lot of money out there, but people don't come up with the right idea. So I was working for a company doing a strategy project for a $1 billion company here a few years ago, and I was working with one of their $100 million divisions, and I was a speaker at their distribution conference, and the CEO and CFO from the mothership was at the conference, and my group that I just worked with, they wanted some money for a project, and so I thought, well, I'll help them out a little bit. So we're at the cocktail party, and I said to the CFO and the CEO, I said, this group I'm working with, they got this project, and they think it looks like it could be very successful, and they need some money. And here's what the guy said. He said, you know what? We're a very successful company. We have a lot of money. They had like 3 operating divisions, and one's of the ones I was working with. He said, we tell the presidents of these divisions all the time. We tell them every quarter, if you've got an idea that you need money, set an appointment up, get on the calendar, bring your idea to our meeting, and present your idea to us. He says, we have a lot of money. If it's a good idea, we'll give you the money. He says, nobody ever comes. So there's a lot of money out there, but you've got to put together have the right idea and put together a plan to go get it. Just one or more of these here. Middle class, rural class. The economy dictates my results. Middle class or world class?
Middle.
Being bold as a businessman is inappropriate.
Middle.
Middle class.
When I become a better performer, I will get better results. I'm the problem and I'm the solution. I'm responsible for my results.
World class.
World, yeah. All right, I think this is the last one of these. I'm working at my capacity. True or false?
False.
False.
I'm a good strategic thinker. True or false?
True.
True.
By the way, this is another one of the these surveys that we put together, we're not like trying to trick anybody. We're just trying to get them to dig. And so one of the we do these 2 questions that we ask in this survey we do this in every survey. We say we ask this question. I'm a good, or I think we say either good or great strategic thinker, and everybody always says yes. They always say yes, I am. It's true. And then a little further down in the survey, we'll say we have a good strategy. And in many cases, they'll say no. The majority of people say, no, we don't have a good strategy. So here a few minutes ago, they said they were a good strategic thinker, and yet they don't have a good strategy. So this is the disconnect that many people have in terms of their thinking. And we help them to get that sorted out. My business won't improve until the economy recovers. True or false?
False.
False.
All right, so what time, where are we on time here, Scott?
We're getting pretty close.
Okay, so Scott has all of these slides are in your portal. So the next few slides here is something that we would normally go through, but maybe, we're flexible. So let me just tell you what this is. And this is something you may want to go off and do on your own, and you can get the slides and you get the questions, but it says mental toughness. The formula is desire, plus vision, plus process has to be less than the cost. In other words, you can't do something that's going to cost you more than what these things are here. So I talked to you earlier about determining what your vision was, determining what the one thing was important in your life. So these next 3 or 4 slides here have to do with for you to do the work. So it helps you crystallize your thinking about yourself and where you're at. So list 5 things you're currently dissatisfied with your professional life. List 5 things you're currently dissatisfied in your personal life. What does success mean to you? What accomplishments are you most proud of and why? What beliefs and values would you be willing to die for? Describe the perfect day in your life if there were no limits. And then list the 3 most positive emotional experiences in your life. You're on an airplane, it's about to crash. You got 30 seconds. You're going to write a note to your infant son and daughter about the 3 most important things you've learned in your life. What are these 3 things? As a child, describe how your parents and other significant family members made you feel about yourself. List the 3 biggest heroes in your life and why you admire them. Write your own obituary. It's 2098, and your great-great-grandchild has to give a speech about you. What will be the main themes in the speech? And this is an interesting one here. People who are incredibly successful, many of the people who we interviewed, and this is something it's just a category of the most important components of your vision: business, career, family, money, etc. People that are really successful, extraordinarily successful, they have as much as a 20 to 30 page typed plan for their life. They've gone to each one of these categories here, and they've written as much as 1 or 2 pages on each one of these, maybe more. There's no limit. You can have it to be as long as you want. But if you're really, really serious about your future and about your vision, you need to write it. I use this outline here to write it. And then these next slides here are just slides to write it on. So when we work with companies for a day, we actually have people go through and actually do this exercise. I realize we're on short of time here, so you can do this yourselves. So in terms of just in closing here, because you're in Scott's group, I will offer this to you if you choose to accept it. I will have a 1-hour Zoom call with anyone who is interested, and I will take you through a little diagnostic process to help you figure out where you and your company are at as it relates to mental toughness. And if you'd like to experience that, I think you would find it valuable and worthwhile. And if you'd like to do that, Scott has my email. It's mark@marklthompson.com. Feel free to send me an email, and we'll schedule a Zoom call, and I will be more than happy to help you with that. Normally we charge something for that, but in this case here, I would offer that for free if you wanted to do it, because you're in Scott's group. So that's all I have.
I want to make sure I got that email right, Mark. It's mark@marklthompson.com.
And I can give you my cell phone real quick if you want to write it down.
I got it. I'll put it in the chat. Go ahead. 612-991-7961. Okay, those are both in the chat. And I appreciate
Yeah,
that.
and just so you
offer.
know, I've been working with companies for over 20 years in strategy and mental toughness and these things. So I think I bring a lot to the table. And if you are interested in having that meeting, I think you would find it would be worthwhile. There's no obligation after the meeting. If you want to talk about working together, great. If not, that's be totally up to you. Are there any
Awesome.
questions that I can answer? I know this has kind of been a lot of information in a short period of time here, but are there any questions that I can answer?
Yeah, Mark, it seems to me that part of the success of strategy and process is getting people involved. I mean, when you say the employees don't understand the customers because they haven't been involved, they don't understand the processes because they aren't involved. They don't understand the strategy because someone's just handed it down. They don't understand it. So isn't that important?
If, you know, I wish I would have said that. No, that's exactly what it is. And the word we use is cross collaboration. When we work with a company on strategy or any of these things, it is always a cross collaborative effort. So everybody has some skin in the game, if you will, and they get to understand it. You know, I just read a survey. I just read this a week ago. If you put 20 leaders in a room and ask them, and if you put 20 leaders in a room, there's probably only one of them that is thinking strategically about the business. And if you did another survey and you asked those 20 leaders to describe that by themselves, describe on a sheet of paper what the strategy of the business is currently, only about 30% of them could describe it. And if you think about that, take that down the road a little bit, and you say, well, these people are out in the marketplace talking to people about my company, our organization, and they don't know our strategy. So
Interesting. Great stuff. Great stuff, Mark. I'm going to personally reach out to you because I've got a few ideas I want to run past you.
okay.
I appreciate it. Now, keep in mind, guys, this will be up, ladies. This will be up under business solutions. Give us a couple of days. But right there in the top right-hand corner, if you want to go back and answer any of those questions and go through that exercise, I think it's time well spent. I look forward to doing it. We'll have it for you under business solutions, the top right-hand corner of the Network in Action website when you log in. Awesome. Mark, thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Look forward to talking to anybody who is interested.
Great. Thank you for your time.
All right. Have a
Thanks,
great
Mark.
day. Bye now.
Thank all of you for joining us. We'll see you next month.